Welcome, focused learners, to today's explainer. We're jumping straight into a super critical lesson from the 4C hair retention curriculum. Today, we're unpacking the actual biological truths behind protective styling. So if you've been struggling with hair retention for a while, grab a seat, because this is exactly the scientific clarity you've been looking for.
Now I want you to really think about this question for a second. What if the very hairstyles you've relied on for years to protect your hair are actually the hidden cause of its destruction? I know, it's a pretty wild thought, right? But for so many of us, it's a harsh biological reality.
Okay, let's dive into this. We call this the protection paradox. You see, true protection in hair care is all about reducing daily manipulation without introducing some new form of structural trauma. When a style reduces how often you touch your hair, but adds massive tension instead, well, it is no longer protecting your strands. It's literally stressing them out.
To dismantle these pervasive beauty myths, here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with the protection paradox, then look at high manipulation zones, examine traction stress at the root, discuss scalp access, and wrap up with the crown standard.
All right, Section 1, the protection paradox and the myth of set it and forget it. We spend so much time and honestly so much money trying to force our coily hair to work with a totally incorrect instruction manual. But here is the absolute truth. A style is not protective simply because it is braided, covered, or left untouched for long periods of time. You might spend hundreds of dollars, sit for 6 hours in a chair, and then not touch your hair for 2 straight months. But just because it looks completely pristine on the outside doesn't automatically mean it's biologically healthy underneath.
So the crucial point here is this concept of silent breakage. This is the damage that happens secretly, right under that long-lasting protective style. Tightly coiled 4C hair has these microscopic bends that act as natural weak points. So when your hair is trapped in this state of long-term mechanical stress, think super tight braids or heavy twists, it suffers from severe manipulation fatigue. It's basically snapping cleanly in half while you're sitting there thinking it's completely safe.
Moving to Section 2, high manipulation zones and the mechanics of uneven tension.
You see, physical force doesn't magically distribute itself evenly across tightly coiled hair. When you pull your hair back, up, or section it off into individual braids, there are very specific, delicate areas that bear the absolute brunt of that repetitive stress. We're talking about your edges, the nape of the neck, the crown, and your ponytail anchor points. These high manipulation zones are exactly where traction damage and thinning almost always show up first.
We really need to start contrasting traditional high-stress styling against retention-centered low-tension habits. Traditional methods tend to prioritize a neat, long-lasting aesthetic over the actual structural integrity of the 4C hair strand itself. On the flip side, low-tension habits biologically support your hair's natural architecture instead of constantly fighting against it.
Which brings us to Section 3, traction stress at the root, biological trauma beneath the surface. Let's move to the root and see how this builds microscopically. Step 1. You add heavy extensions or tight braids to a relatively fine strand of hair. Step 2. That unending, literal weight creates constant traction, which physically pulls the hair follicle. And Step 3. This results in severe traction stress and follicular congestion right at the base.
Now, why is that pulling so incredibly dangerous? It all comes down to the dermal papilla. This is the critical blood supply at the very base of the hair follicle, the part that feeds and sustains hair growth. When you apply excessive weight, you are physically pulling the follicle away from its food source. You are literally starving the root of the hair. And guys, this is exactly what induces traction alopecia.
Because of this, there are glaring red flags we absolutely have to stop ignoring. If an installation causes pain or severe tenderness, if you're getting bumps at the root, or if you're dealing with headaches, it is not just tight. It is an active detriment to your retention. These are the literal biological warning signs of root trauma, and let me tell you, no protective style is worth losing your hair follicle over.
All right, Section 4, scalp access and cleansing. The scalp access mandate.
We're pivoting now to the literal foundation of all hair retention, the scalp. Let's bust a heavily stigmatized myth right out of the gate. Some folks actually think leading the scalp alone to let oils build up acts like some kind of magical fertilizer for hair growth. It's just entirely false. The biological fact is, healthy retention begins with a clean, functioning scalp environment. Remember, your scalp is skin. Neglecting to wash it for 2 months just because you have a protective style installed creates a toxic barrier over the exact biological factory where your hair is produced.
And this brilliantly illustrates the contrast. Just look at the dermatological nightmare of neglect. You've got trapped sweat, excess sebum, and dead skin. That mix becomes a literal feeding ground for Malassezia fungi, which leads to severe follicular congestion. Now, compare that to the structural respect of a clean scalp. Cleared follicles, a beautifully balanced acid mantle, and the regular removal of all that environmental debris through reasonable scalp access and proper shampooing.
If you choose the neglect route, the biological consequences are pretty severe. A disrupted acid mantle leads straight to chronic itching, flaking, and odor. And here is the real kicker. An inflamed, stressed follicle goes into a defense mechanism. It shuts down. This leads to follicle miniaturization, meaning it produces thinner, weaker hair. Or worse, it prematurely forces the hair into the telogen shedding phase, causing it to fall out completely. So true protective styling absolutely demands scalp access, no exceptions.
Finally, Section 5, the crowned standard, a new biologically informed approach. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that we've covered a lot of heavy science today, but it's time to shift from that deep frustration into scientific clarity and some really empowering solutions. Here is your new instruction manual, the absolute core retention philosophy. Protective styling works best when it reduces manipulation without increasing tension. Healthy retention begins with healthier styling habits and a healthy scalp environment. Simple as that. If a style doesn't meet these criteria, it is just not protecting you.
The great news is, you don't have to figure this all out on your own. You can actually continue this journey by tapping into a complete ecosystem of professional support. There's the comprehensive Rooted educational course for deeper trichology learning, the Rooted book framework, scientifically formulated herbal hair and scalp products to keep that proper moisture balance, and retention-focused protective styling appointments so you can apply these textbook principles practically and safely.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a rather provocative thought to ponder. We've seen today how visual beauty trends completely skewed our approach to the natural biology of 4C hair. It really makes you wonder, what other perfectly functioning parts of ourselves are we trying to fix simply because we don't understand how they were built to function in the first place?
When you stop trying to fix it and start trying to understand it, absolutely everything changes. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. This has been the Crown Standard, presented by Arlana Styles Man Extensions. Keep learning, stay rooted, and I'll see you next time.